Well, Corin, welcome along to the Better Dads Club podcast. I am excited to have you on the chat today. And obviously, not obviously for anybody listening, but obviously to me, we've had a couple of goes at this because you guys are traveling and you're currently in Peru. Yeah.
Yeah, we're currently in Peru.
Sorry, Peru, not Peru, me trying to be fancy. But yeah, you guys are over there sort of doing some work, or are you on holiday?
We're doing a lot of things. We normally go every year to Peru as part of the business because we work with some amazing farms and farmers over here, and all our products are produced here. But we had a hiatus last year because we had our second daughter born in May, on 12th of May, my birthday. So there's something significant about that. Sally always says she's your little mirror because she chose your day to be born. Yeah, be mindful of that, raising her, that she will mirror you and your shadows, your dark side as much as your light side. So that's an interesting little thing there, that I'm sure we'll talk more about today when it comes to kind of conscious parenting and things to consider. And we're here also, so we're here to introduce her to the family in Peru, and she can connect to her Peruvian roots and ancestry here, which I think is really, really important. She's probably a little bit too young to remember it, but I mean, Amara, first daughter, this is her third trip to Peru, and she remembers last time, and every time she comes, I think it's going to help strengthen that connection for her. And we're here to run our annual cacao retreat in the Amazon, which is super exciting. We've got 10 people coming from New Zealand, Australia, and the US to spend 8 days in the Amazon connecting with cacao, its history, ancestry, science, and production. Yeah, and also having some time out to reconnect with my beautiful wife. The beautiful thing in Peru is we have a lot of help here. So we're very, very fortunate. We have a nanny who comes every day and helps us with the kids. And we have family, aunties, uncles, parents. So we're really excited. Like, this May for us is all about us. It's my birthday. It's Sally's birthday. So this month is like, we're going on 2 date nights a week. And date days. We went to the spa last night, which was incredible. Like jacuzzi, saunas, just time together. And yeah, really something that we've missed over the last year since our second was born. So it's a bit of everything, really, being here. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I feel like we might have just skipped a few things in terms of maybe just going back. If you could just talk a little bit about Seleno Health. Obviously you're running some workshops over there. You've brought some people with you to run a retreat around cacao. What is Seleno Health? What do you guys do?
Yeah, I'll take you back. I mean, I met Seleno Health is myself and my wife, Sally. That's really, we're the only 2 employees. We're a small business, but a growing and thriving business. It began 11 and a half years ago. So I was working in Big Pharma. I was a medical liaison that had come through medical research, did a PhD in med chem. So I was very scientific focused, and I suppose I was coming at health from a Western health perspective, the kind of drug interventions and working with, cardiometabolic patients. But a lot of it, what I was doing was lifestyle disease. And I always felt like we weren't really nailing it. We There was a lot of a lot of hype about the new drugs coming out and the new technology, but your patients weren't really improving. And my own health experience in Western health really mirrored that. I mean, I had issues with chronic fatigue in my 20s. At the height of my problem, I was on, I think, 10 different drugs. There are 10 different medications. I'm seeing like 7 different specialists, and everything from a cardiologist to a immunologist to a endocrinologist and a gastroenterologist, everything.
Covering all the systems.
All the systems were being covered, and everyone was kind of giving me something for just each symptom. And yeah, nothing really helped. And it took a long time to kind of come off all those drugs. But the one thing that I really struggled to come off was the antidepressant that they'd put me on, Prozac. And I tried 3 times unsuccessfully. So when I'd met Sally at that point in my life, like I was pretty cushy with my life. Like, I lived in Sydney, had my pad, had my very well-paid job, was traveling around Australia, surfing, was having a great life, beautiful apartment, young, free, and single. But I still felt empty. I felt there was a lot of sadness inside. There was a lot of loneliness that I felt. I felt very flat in terms of emotion. Like I lacked that joy and that spark. And I think a lot of that was the antidepressant. Like I remember when I went on Prozac, it definitely took away the anxiety um, and a lot of the depressive thoughts. But I felt like it took also away a lot of the potential to feel joyous in my life. So it was an interesting place and time in my life because I felt like had done everything I should have. I'd gone through, I'd studied science, I'd done my post grad, I got the career, was set, had the life, but yet I didn't feel the reward. And I chased a lot of dopamine back then, many different forms, and I just never felt fulfillment. I never felt enriched. And I felt like something was missing or something was wrong with me. I was broken. So yeah, it was interesting because people would see me and go, "Oh, what a life!" I mean, man, I used to get 3 months paid annual leave a year. You imagine that? I would go away and I'd come back and my bank account had more money than when I left.
Wow. Sounds like pre-industrial age France.
I mean, I was like, looking back now, I was like, man, I was blessed, and yet I didn't really appreciate what I had. But yeah, it was an interesting journey. So then I just went to Peru to go surfing, and I met Sally, and I think everything changed at that point in my life because she really opened my eyes to a different world. Um, and it's interesting because people sometimes when they look at us, they think, "Oh, she's an indigenous woman from Peru, and she's very spiritual," and and so she showed him spirituality and all these different forms. But the reality was, like, she was working in a bank. She's an industrial engineer. Like, she was as corporate as I was. So it was really a journey for both of us to connect to something deeper and more meaningful in our lives.
Were
I think
you
she,
on Prozac at that time, or was that a period where you
yes,
were
yeah.
trying to get off it? Yeah. Okay.
No, I was on it. I'd given up trying. I tried unsuccessfully, and every time the anxiety just came rushing back. So yeah, and I went there with no intention other than I just want to have a holiday and have a surf around South America. I met her by chance and fell in love, crazy in love, and she just became a rock in my life. And it's interesting because we look back now and she says to me, I was just as unstable as you were back then. But I felt like she was the common sense, you know? She's like, no, I was dealing with my trauma of growing up, of colonization, of disconnection to Quechua and Andean roots, of like a very patriarchal society that doesn't value women, of abuse and all sorts of things that happened in her life. She's like, I had more trauma than you. I maybe was just good at hiding or dealing with or masking a lot of that. So yeah, it was interesting because I remember at the time thinking, fuck, this girl has it all figured out. Like you know, that's what I want. I want to be like that in my life. But that wasn't true. She was just, yeah, maybe I was in a worse place than her, I suppose, emotionally at that point. Um, yeah, so it was great. So man, we connected. We had an incredible time. And I had to leave to go up to Costa Rica to go surfing with a friend that I'd booked. And I just remember I said, like, I'm leaving Peru, but I'm going to change everything, change my flights, come back because I want to see you again. So I like rewired my whole trip. And I said, if I do that for you, can you take a week off your work? And she's like, yes. And I was like, this is beautiful, amazing. So yeah, we fell in love. I had an amazing time, and she started to take interest in my health journey. And she it's interesting because she's, like I said, she was very corporate, but she said she had this kind of deep knowledge of her culture and her plant medicines and things from growing up that her grandma had taught her and her mum as well. She said, you need to take maca. It's the food of your brain. And I was like, I don't know what maca is, but yeah, sure, I'll take it. You're gorgeous. I'll do whatever you say. And so she started feeding me this plant. She'd go and buy the roots at the market and she'd boil these dried roots. And it was in my porridge in the mornings. And she'd make me these teas out of it. And sometimes she'd sneak it in a stew in the evening. And what was really interesting was like, I started to notice changes. And I thought at first, this is just, I'm just in love. That's all it is. But I'd been in love over the last 10 years. But this was different. It was different. And I was like, well, maybe she's just the special one. And that's why my heart is kind of starting to feel stuff again and open. But the reality is when I look back, I'm like, Maka did something to me. And I said, that's where the intrigue came because I actually had to go. I was starting to feel amazing. I was starting to feel that spark again. I was starting to feel alive again and connected. And the big thing that made me think that this was doing something was my libido went up. And that was the clincher in my mind, because as a rational scientist, I'm very skeptical of things. But when I had libido, I was like, no, that's not just love. Like, there's physiologically something happening to my hormones. Like, my testosterone levels are up. My energy is up. My libido is up. And like, I feel like I'm 18 years old again. And that was interesting because when we first met, she was like, you're so cold. Like, Corin, it is muy frío siempre, she'd say, like, you're cold. And I said, well, maybe I'm not Latin, like, maybe I'm not. But the reality was, like, I was just not, I just was more asexual because of the antidepressant, really killed my libido. But I didn't realize it had been so long since I'd felt that spark that I just thought that's how getting old is,
How old were you at the
You
time?
said, 30 something, 30. When did we meet? Was it about 34, 35, 35? And I mean, I was like, scientifically, men have their sexual peak at 18 years old, decline from then downwards, blah, blah. So I assumed
Testosterone
that,
levels naturally drop around sort of mid 30s
yeah.
as well.
And I was like, well, this is just normal. Like, this is normal. You have sex once or twice a month. That's it. That's getting old. Like, you're not 18 anymore. But actually, like now looking at it, I'm like, well, that's so not true. It's, there's so much more to it than that. Like, once you are happy and healthy and balanced, your hormones, it's a different story as a woman and as a man. I think we undervalue the importance of male sex hormones because we're so focused often on female sex hormones because it's more complicated in terms of their menstrual cycles. And as men, we just think, oh yeah, well, men, we're simple beings. But it is complex. So, I mean, look at circadian rhythms and how they impact on testosterone and the role of the hypothalamus and pituitary in producing the right amount of sex hormone to create libido and to help with blood flow and tissue dilation and all the things that are required. So I think it's interesting. Deviated. So yeah. So what happened was, let me cut to the chase. So I went back to Australia. I'd come off my antidepressants. Like, I stopped them and I was taking maca. And I actually had a period where I stopped maca because I came back and I didn't have any. And I was like, I need to get some of the stuff, but I kept forgetting because I was so busy. And I noticed I, it changed again. And I was like, that's when I was like, this stuff definitely is doing something. So I got a supply in Australia and was taking it regularly, and things improved again. And Sally came out from Peru. I invited her out and she spent a month with me and we traveled around Australia. And that was the point where I said, I'm done. And like, quit my job, quit my career. And I said, I can't be without you. I'm coming to Peru and I want to pursue a different life. And I think it was also from my experience of working in big pharma and seeing the flaws and the issues with Western health and its approach, kind of lifestyle related issues, and my own journey and seeing the power of plant medicines and the power of connection and understanding. And I just said, this is like, there's a reason I went to Peru. Like, there's so many synchronicities occurring in my life that this is the new direction for me. And I felt a sense of peace with that decision. And everyone's like, oh, you'll be back. You'll be gone for 3 months and you'll come back because you'll miss the money and you'll miss, and. And I just said, no, I really feel like this is a turning point in my life. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but I know that this is what I want to do. and I never looked back. I mean, we set up a business, I lived in Peru with her for about a year and a half. We set up a business. We connected with an incredible farm. We're doing ancestral maca production in the Andes. Met this amazing farming family, the most beautiful people on the planet that just opened their doors and their hearts to us. And Florencio, our farmer, like he believed in the plant medicine and he said, like, this cured my cancer. He had been given terminal cancer diagnosis 40 years ago. And he believes that maca is what kept him alive and to the point where his cancer went into remission. And now he's had, an amazing family. And yeah, so he was an inspiration meeting him and meeting the family and seeing the work that they were doing up there and their connection to tradition. I started to learn Andean cosmovision through my wife and through these people. And I suppose I just felt like it gave me that inner peace that I was missing, that connection piece that kind of I was lacking at the start. So it was magical, and we really felt good in what we were doing. So Sally quit her job in the bank, and we started making maca, bringing it to New Zealand. And here we are, 11 years later. We have 35 different products that we produce. We've just made a high dose concentrated oil of maca as an extract that we're working with at Otago University and their cannabis research center there. And we had a 2-year postdoc just finish a project looking at how maca works on the endocannabinoid system that I was co-supervising. We just got a PhD student starting last month at Otago that we're funding, who's looking at the neuroscience of cacao and its effects on dopamine and serotonin and antidepressant effects. So we have like this, I mean, we invest now, I think last year we invested almost $200,000 in D through the universities to investigate these types of plants and understand the power that they have. Because I want to bring that credibility to the industry and to the plants. And I want to convince, medical people like me that this stuff has value and that we shouldn't overlook it. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing,
So that's,
because you've worked a lot with, there's been some studies with Victoria University for the
mm,
cacao as well, right?
yeah, cacao and maca, and also with Callahan Innovation out in Lower Hutt. So just to go out there and visit those guys, and they were doing some analysis of components within the maca and cacao. But we've now moved to Otago because Otago's got an incredible pharmacology division. So the stuff we did at Victoria was my old friend Rob Kaiser, who's now an associate professor there. He was one of my lab buddies back when I was at Vic Uni in chemistry, and they did some initial biochemical work with maca, which was exciting because there's one thing I found fascinating is like when they take this radish, it's a radish, it's from Brassicaceae, so it's similar to our garden radish, but it's a unique variety that grows at high altitude. When they take it
This is
out of the
maca.
soil, yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
maca, yep.
yeah.
When they take it out of the soil, they lay it under the sun for 3 to 4 months to dry into these little rock hard pellets, and that's what my wife used to boil me. And she said, "You've got to get it like that form." Because if you get the fresh radish, it doesn't have the same properties. If you eat it raw, it's not the same. And so we looked at that process, and that was the initial pre-studies we did as a summer research scholarship with Vic, is we showed that sun drying, which is a traditional Andean preparation that indigenous farmers follow, produces the macamides are like, they mimic human cannabinoids. So that's what makes it bioactive. So those initial studies we did there, and that for me, that was super exciting. I said to Sally, like, you guys are onto something, man. Like, this is a unique plant. This is not just about high levels of minerals and vitamins and like this stuff works in the cannabinoid system. Like, not many plants can do that. Cannabis is the one that we all think of, but there's only a handful of other plants I know that have these profound effects. And it has 26 different macamides. So there's a lot of interest now about this plant because of understanding this mechanism of endocannabinoid function. Uh,
So with the risk of, obviously we live in a day and age where it's kind of when industries get involved and there's money to be made, more is more. Were there any comparisons made between the traditional sort of, what did you say, 3-month sun drying
Yeah, so Andean
versus,
sun dried.
yeah, so differences in the production of these endocannabinoid, or the way that it's able to impact that, versus like an oven dried, or a system that speeds up the drying process, essentially, like an
Yeah,
oven or something like that, that could
yeah.
take that
So
3
there was
months and do
this.
it in 3 days.
Yeah, there was a study that looked at oven dried versus sun dried, and they showed it doesn't have the same potency, the same levels of these mucomides. And a lot of that is to do with the high UV levels at that altitude too. Like you're 4,000 meters up, so you need ultra high UV. The interesting thing is a lot of work has been done with this in China. The Chinese are really obsessed with maca because of the libido effects. So they actually stole seeds from Peru, got them into Bolivia, and exported those seeds to China, and then started growing it illegally there. And now all the initial research was done by the Peruvians to say it's not the same because it doesn't make these macamides. Now the Chinese have like 8 GMO patents on maca to create maca that makes macamides grown in China, processed via different methods, quick dried. So it's all over Alibaba now, this Chinese maca, and they standardize it via the macamides.
Sorry, did you say it
To
was
answer your,
GMO?
yeah, GMO. So to answer your question, yes, they've done it in labs synthetically using genetic modification, and this stuff is now being sold all through Alibaba. And we get contacted by Chinese agents trying to sell us Chinese maca because we're importing. So it's a bit of a minefield to navigate. And of course, when there's big money in it, companies will do anything to take a piece of that pie. Yeah.
There's hard evidence there that the synthetic stuff, the GMO stuff, is just an inferior product.
I would say yes. And I don't trust, well, firstly, I don't trust genetic modified plants. I think look at the history of what we've done with our wheat and our corn, and how, the impact it's having on our gut biome at the moment with GMO modified plants. And I always think tradition is best. I mean, they spent 2,500 years figuring this out. We can't just industrialize everything and change it. The other thing that was really interesting is like we looked at some of the synthetically produced macamides that you can buy on, Cayman and those kind of companies that synthesize these things. And we tested in Otago's cannabis studies, we tested the single macamide versus the plant extract, and we showed the plant extract superior. So there's a synergistic effect you have when you have a full, but this is something that frustrates me too about the cannabis industry. It's like, why are we only using CBD? Why are we not using full spectrum? And that's because drug companies want isolates. They want a single product. They want a single manufactured, compound or extracted compound. And you look at all the work done by Ethan Russo, incredible cannabis research from the US, has written books on all of this, like the importance of full spectrum entourage, and how even the terpenes in cannabis make a difference. My good friends, the Arjuns who run Good Herb Soda and Trips & Co. in New Zealand, like these guys have been working with cannabis terpenes, and they got me inspired on all of the content behind how you can have the same levels of cannabinoids in a strain of cannabis, but the terpenes can change how those cannabinoids work. So you could have one that's, say, high in myrcene, which when you smoke it creates a sedative effect, like synonymous with couch lock. So there's a strain I think called Blue Dream that they talk about, which is really high myrcene. So it's very sedate as an effect. Like people use it to go to sleep, people use it to just chill. You're not going to want to dance when you smoke this stuff. And then there's another strain they make in the US called OG Kush, which is like the opposite. It doesn't have myrcene, it's got pinene and those more limonene, like those uplifting terpenes. And those strains, like they're dancing forms of cannabis. You smoke them to go party. So even in the recreational side of cannabis, like there's an understanding around the importance of terpene profiles, that the full spectrum of cannabinoids, the ratio of THC to CBD, the ratio of CBG and CBN and these other cannabinoids in there. But yet, when we look at the industry of cannabis and the way it's regulated, it's like you're going to get CBD extract, 30 mg per mil, pure isolate. So it's moving away from nature into that laboratory setting, which is just what you were saying, Tom, about, is that going to happen? Of course it's going to happen. And as a scientist who's come into natural health, I'm anti that approach because I feel like the plant has knowledge and it has the ability to work in the body in ways that we may not even fully understand, and that using the whole plant is so much more important than just isolating a single compound.
Well, that kind of correlates with what we've seen with the supplement industry as well, right? In terms of here's an isolate vitamin C, here's a vitamin B, here's a
Mhm.
vitamin D, and then now it's more like, well, actually, we understand that they need to work in a complex because for this vitamin to work, it needs this vitamin, and this fat soluble vitamin and this water soluble vitamin to then kind of become in, and then it's that other thing around the old saying of food be thy medicine, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been a pushback towards whole foods again, which I think is
Mm.
exciting. Like, I'm always about whole food. And this is from my own personal experience. Like, I went from seeing all these different medical specialists and being given a drug for everything to boomeranging into the natural health industry and going to see naturopaths who would not prescribe, but advise me to take a supplement for each problem. So I'm taking my melatonin for sleep. I'm taking my B12 for energy. I'm taking my magnesium for muscle pain. I'm taking you know what I mean? Like, it goes on and on
Mm.
and on. And so I want to be somewhere in the middle where I'm like, why, what's the difference between giving a supplement for every problem to a drug for every problem? Like, surely I don't need all of those things if I'm eating a balanced whole food diet. I always say to people, if you're dealing with a chronic health issue like I went through, you really shouldn't be taking more than three things. I supplement with glutathione. So I take glutathione precursors, but I don't do that all year round. I do it seasonally and I do it when times of extra stress. I take maca, which is adaptogenic, so it works with my entire body. Like, people go, "Oh, how did you beat the insomnia with your chronic fatigue? Because that's such a big." Did you take melatonin? And I said, "No, I healed my body, and the insomnia went away because the insomnia is merely a symptom of a bigger issue,
Mm.
disbalance and disharmony within my body, and chronic inflammation affecting all parts of my nervous system." So I take maca and I use things like cacao for cognitive enhancement. I do a bit of lion's mane work sometimes for cognitive enhancement. But those things I do acutely because they often give you more acute responses. So that's affordable and sustainable long term.
At the start, you mentioned around the pharmacological work that you were doing and creating medications to fight against or to combat those symptoms of lifestyle disease. So it sounds like what we're also talking about here is the fact that our lifestyles are negatively impacting our bodies. And we're living in these situations where we are under high stress. We've got light bulbs that are disrupting our circadian rhythms, our melatonin production. We've got electromagnetic radiation coming from cell phones, Wi-Fi, all of this stuff that hasn't been experienced before by humanity as far as we're as far as we're aware. And in isolated living in apartment buildings with in terms of air circulation, a lot of people living in new houses where there's a lot of off-gassing for things like carpet and fresh paint on the walls and these kind of things. There's a toxic load that we're not really it's not really brought to the surface and kind of said, oh, if you're going to buy this, if you're walking into this new house, here's all the chemical stuff that's going to be off-gassing for the next 3 to 5 years that could be impacting your health in some way, shape or form. How do we balance that and get back into more of the traditional sense and looking at things more holistically when there are more and more people moving into bigger cities and there are these lifestyle changes that are happening all around us? How do we combat that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the thing that we need to think about is, like, we could all hibernate in a retreat somewhere in the world and thrive and flourish. But how do we flourish in the modern world in an urban setting is really the
Mm.
key. And I think one thing I always say to people is, like, don't underestimate the ability of your body to self heal. Because I was incredibly sick, you know, with chronic fatigue. And if anyone wants to go and have a look at the webinar, I talk through all of this in great detail on our website. You can hear my story. And sometimes when I give these workshops on chronic fatigue, people, they go, oh, wow, I thought I was sick. Like, when they hear about the journey of what I went through and how ill I was and how bedridden and how sick, everything is recoverable. Like I always laugh and I say, well, yeah, I was incredibly sick, but look at me, 12 years later, I'm surfing 8 hours in a day and hiking 5,500-meter mountains in Peru, full-time dad, getting 4 or 5 hours interrupted sleep per night, full-time husband, full-time business. Like it's chalk and cheese, looking at those two images of myself. And I feel like a lot of this resurfaced as well during the COVID era, where people, let's talk. I don't want to get into the whole vaccine thing, but, people had these ideas of like, if you've been vaccinated or you had a vaccine injury, then, you're permanently damaged. Your DNA is mutated. All of this stuff came out. And I always say, like, I don't want to discuss that side of it, but what I want to tell people is you can recover from anything. And the moment that you put a belief system in there and you create a limiting belief, that's your only barrier to getting to where you want to be. So I agree with you 100% with what's going on in the urban world where we're being subjected to toxins, environmental, chemical, physical, emotional, dopamine addiction and screens. And it's just so fast paced for what our evolution is not ready for this physiologically, for where we've come from, the speed at which we're accelerating into this electronic world, the way in which we're processing food, all of these things. Yes, 100% agree. Like our body is under constant fire from all directions, but never underestimate, like I said, the ability of your body to self-heal, to thrive, to flourish, because so much of that is also held within your belief systems. And that's where I'm really big on neuroplasticity, because I had to learn the hard way that you have to believe health and healthy before you can achieve health and healthy. And as a belief system, like I did the lightning process, which is kind of similar to neurolinguistic programming, like an intensive course to change my belief systems. Because when I was ill with chronic fatigue and mental health problems, I became chronic fatigue and I became unwell. I had limiting beliefs for everything in my life. These belief systems I developed through trauma, of course, health trauma, fear. And you hold everything to be true. I can't do this because of that. I can't do this because, and so you become a victim within that kind of idea of your health and wellness. And everything you do is fear based, where I can't eat pizza because it's got gluten and I'm gluten intolerant. I can't drink dairy because there's a balance. That doesn't mean we go out and we eat whatever we want. But what I'm saying is, if you truly want to flourish and thrive, you need to hold those belief systems first and allow your body to be moderate within the modern world. Because if we're extremists, we're living through fear-based systems, which is not positive neurology. And it's funny because Sally is my best guide for this, because she will tell me off sometimes and goes, Corin, it's just a piece of pizza. It's not going to kill you, because I'm very strict on what I eat and what goes into my body and all of that. But I agree with her 100%. I say, yes, I know it's just pizza. It's a belief. And so we're navigating that with our kids at the moment, because they're developing their belief systems right now. And we want to ensure that they don't have this lifelong fear of sugar because we're anti-sugar. We want to ensure that they don't, that they, those things that we're trying to keep them away from because we know they're not good for their health. So we want them to understand that, a little bit of ultra processed food every now and then is not going to make you sick, but we don't want to be consuming it all the time.
On that, how are you guys managing, I guess sort of navigating the ideas of, because obviously there's food in your own house and the way to manage things at your house, and then there's things managed with other people, so friends and families. Like, do you have those conversations when you're at other birthday parties and these kind of things with your friends and neighbors, or how's the
Yeah,
community interaction?
I mean, with grandparents, we say, don't buy them crap food. Grandparents love to treat them. But then,
Mm.
and I also say it's about portion control and portion size is a big thing too. So if you want to buy a treat for her, I'm not, once a week, I'm not going to say no. But, a slither of chocolate as opposed to a whole chocolate bar. And so Sally gives a lot more treats to our kids than I do. I'm very strict on that kind of stuff. But she will go and buy, we'll go to an organic store and we'll buy those like sugar only ice blocks. Sugar free fruit. What I'm trying to say is not sugar free, but it's like natural sugar. It's fruit. It's like mango, coconut pulp. It's not processed with flavors and additives. And we'll look for healthy swaps. We'll look for healthy alternatives. We're always trying to enable them to enjoy treats. Like it's so great because my daughter, Amara, she loves cacao. She'll have a pure drop of cacao, which is 100% chocolate, like nothing else. And that is dessert for her. I'm so blessed that she doesn't crave. So, we've found that you can, if you set your children up like that, then you could say to grandparents, like, hey, you can give her a treat. Here's a bag of cacao drops that like 99% of other children would spit out in disgust. That's a treat for her. And she's big into like gummies. So we get her like vitamin gummies or gut friendly gummies. And, that's a treat for her. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard navigating this because then, she goes to a birthday party and parents aren't like us. And, this fairy bread and all the things that, you know, Tim Tams and all those things. And so it's just about trying to help her navigate that situation and say, like, it's really, like I said, I think the key is portion size, portion control. I'm not saying no, you can't have a Tim Tam, but let's just take a teeny piece off and there's your treat. Yeah, but it's tough. I don't know. I don't know how, if we're doing the right thing, but we're doing our best to try and enable her to not be that poor kid who's like, I'm not allowed to eat any of that.
No, look, I can understand.
Yeah.
I think from where I sit as a dad, I'm in a co-parenting relationship. So while our boy's got two households, both me and his mum, we both have the same ideals around food and the same understandings in terms of like organic. There's this hierarchy of organic, sort of sugar-free, but like gluten-free, and just kind of keeping things natural and real, which I think is something that's super important because when having come from a health coaching background and working in the fitness industry for a long time, where you see a lot of people, and it's a lot of talk is, especially from the general nutrition point of view, a lot of talk is around caloric values of food. And that kind of comes from this idea of like, well, that's just an energy marker as opposed to where is the food coming from? To your point earlier around genetically modified foods and the differences in quality, just in terms of the natural and what's being produced and what chemicals within the food are going to be there. And then it also comes down to, well, it's not just you are what you eat, it's what you can digest and assimilate. So if you've got highly processed foods that your body can't break down and digest and assimilate, and you mentioned around gut health as well. So if we've got gut dysbiosis and the bacteria and can't break down the foods that we're eating, then we're not actually getting that nutritional benefit, and it's more like a food-like substance, or it's just kind of like the filler food that is not providing that nourishment. But then when we have the nourishing foods, then our bodies can break that down. We get the nutrients, and we don't feel the need to have that next thing that, you can eat like people eating like a whole bag of popcorn, a whole bag of chips because, it's a certain amount of calories and it's fine. And it's just like, sure, but you're going to, you know from your experience that you're going to be hungry in another half an hour, and you're actually going to end up overeating on the caloric value as well as just you're eating crap because it's highly processed stuff. So, as at least, I guess, in the households that our son's in, he, like, similar to, your daughters, he loves his cacao. He'll eat a cacao drop as well. He'll eat sauerkraut. He loves his sardines. He loves avocado, like olives, avocados, all of the, like, real foods, because he just hasn't had exposure to, other things. He hasn't, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't had candy and lollies. And some people might sit there and they might go, that's so restrictive. And it's like, well, actually, he's 3. This is the most important developmental time for him. When he's an adult, like he can choose what he wants. But at this point, as a dad or as parents, and this is my opinion, it's up to us to ensure that the kids are getting the healthiest environment that they can thrive in, the best nourishment that they can thrive in. And when I say nourishment, I don't just mean the food. I also mean, emotional support and other things that they're consuming as far as media stuff's concerned. So, another cool thing that is the same across both households is he doesn't get much screen time.
Yeah.
Like the other day, he was at home sick, not last week, but the week before. And for the first time, he and I watched a movie for the first time. So he's 3.5. We haven't watched a movie at all. We've hardly sat down and watched screens, but we watched Aristocats. And so, that was made in like 1970 or something like that. And I'd let him watch a portion of Cars one time, maybe a year ago. And he fell in love with Cars, but we didn't watch the whole thing. I was like, right, we can watch we'll watch 20 minutes. Like we'll watch a short amount of this. But just even witnessing the differences between the bright lights, the flashiness, the speed, obviously it's cars, it's all about a race car, but the speed of transitions on those clips versus the speed and the storytelling of this classic film was quite different. So, letting him sort of see that in a way that's not going to disrupt his nervous system too much and still have the comfort, like he was, during the movie, he's sitting on my lap, we're snuggling in. So he's getting that. He knows that it's a nice, safe place. And, I think for me, and then when I took him to another kid's birthday party, I think it was that following weekend. It's interesting to see him, like he's just not interested. And like he wanted to go for the strawberries. He's not interested in going for the lollies.
But do you think, Tom, that goes back to that healthy swaps? Like healthy swaps includes screen time too. You look at the difference between Coco Melon and Miss Rachel. There's healthy swaps that you can do on all of this. And I think, like you were saying, like if you get them in those habits and routines, then it's like they don't want, like you said he went to the birthday party, he didn't want to go and eat all the dirty foods. So it's a habitual thing as well. Like they understand that there's still treats, there's still value, but it's always, for me as a parent, it's like the job is always about finding what is the healthiest form that I can give them right now of this. Because there's always, there's good and bad and everything. And getting lazy is the worst thing. Like making it yourself. Like we make ice creams for them,
Mm-hmm.
We make their own ice creams. We make their own treats. We do baking together and stuff. And then how much sugar is going in it. And what you're feeding your kids. But yeah, I agree. I think it's the same. You don't want to be that anal parent who won't let their kids do anything or touch anything, but it's always about finding how do we balance this so that they can still be a normal kid. Because my fear is like, what if they rebel later? I never had to got McDonald's as a kid, so now I'm going to eat junk food all the time, Whereas if they feel like they've been treated at times, then maybe they're not going to go down that road.
Well, you raise an interesting thing there. I mean, there's a couple of threads on that from a psychological point of view, in terms of like, why do kids rebel? And I think that there's probably a lot to be said around the nature of the home life. You guys are not only married, but you're also business partners. You're running all of these things together, right? But you're also, as you said before, you're also a full-time dad. You're also healthy. You're doing these things, so you're there and involved. And so I can't imagine that it would be like the relationship that you're building with your kids is quite a natural one, as opposed to being away. And let's think about it from an extreme point of view of like a father that needs to go and work for 3 months or 3 weeks on in the mines or something like that, and come back where there's a bit more of separation. And then if they're coming back, potentially there's depending on how they're feeling when they're coming back, there might be some emotional dysregulation that's going on, because at that age, under 7, under 10 even, kids are developing so fast in a week that 3 weeks for them is a huge amount of time. And when we think about the rebellion, a lot of that when I think about my rebellion, a lot of that was because my parents, like I was told that things were bad and that they weren't for me, but my parents were doing them, like smoking, alcohol, like you shouldn't be smoking, it's bad for you. And it's like, all right, sure, I won't smoke. And going away at 11 years old and having your first cigarette, and because you want to kind of be an adult as opposed to, and it's sort of no disrespect to my parents, like it's just, I think that there's an element of when you've got good relationships, and a couple of the other conversations that I've had with some of the other guests already, where you've got those good relationships, that there's a healthy relationship that's going on that doesn't require rebellion, or at least it's more of a, okay, you can go and you can try this out and you can experience it and then see how it feels and come back and report on it. So one of the things that I've heard from people in the past, and this is going back before I was a dad, was exactly that, around, at a party, for example, and the kids being exposed to foods and things that they're not usually getting at their home. And the parent would say to them, okay, cool, like, yep, you can go and you can have that biscuit or that fizzy drink or whatever it was. And then let's see how it makes you feel. So you're getting them connected into their own experience. And then they might notice, oh, actually, yeah, I got really hyper and I was running around. And then, you know what, I felt sick. And then, you know what, I actually didn't really enjoy that. And then it was like, okay, well, what was different? Yeah, okay, maybe it was that Fanta. And then so the empowerment for the child to go, okay, well, here's me, my parents are allowing me to have this experience, and then I've had this experience, and now I'm aware of how these things are impacting my body. And actually, this is why that cacao is really good, because it's,
Yeah.
I'm getting that elevated feeling, just as per your experience with the maca, as you were saying before.
Yeah, I think kids need to be able to learn, and learning comes through their own. I mean, you see the attitude that, like, my 3-year-old, like, Daddy, I can do it. Daddy, I'm going to do it. Like, already at that age, they want to do it. And you have to let them learn themselves, because if you keep telling them, or you're just controlling them. And I think that's the thing where rebellion is going to hit more later. But it's interesting what you say, yeah, about the mirror. I call it mirroring. We grow up. We all have mirror neurons. We mirror each other all the time, but particularly as children, they are your mirrors constantly. Their neurology mirrors your behavior. And it's interesting when you say, you saw your parents doing this, they say don't do this, but yet subconsciously it's already gone into your brain, and you're already creating those pathways and mirroring their behavior. And Sally and I always say, like, when she's going through times of distress, or struggling to deal with emotions, or let's look at ourselves, because, well, that's our mirror there. She's our little girl, and she is, at that age, her brain is not in the place, it's not in a developed place to fully process and understand frustration, for example. And who's frustrated right now? I'm frustrated. How am I displaying my frustration? Is it because they sponge off you and they mirror all of this behavior? And so it's a really great time for us to look at ourselves when we're struggling with behavioral changes that our kids are going through, and saying, okay, well, what stresses are we under right now? And how can I better do this or say that or deal with? And often it's creating boundaries. And like, this is why I think it's really, as a man, I feel like one of the big things I've learned that was difficult for me to learn, was about really listening and allowing my partner to influence me in a way where I'm not offended always, or upset or hurt by what they say. Um, and it's difficult. It's difficult because often guys go, "Oh, she's nagging me. I'm being nagged for this or for that." And it's one of those things, like, it is hard because we work together. But someone once said to me, "Never work with your wife." You know what? I 100% disagree with that, because working with my wife is the greatest pleasure that I have in my life, is having her as my partner. And, when it comes to business, because I truly value what she brings to the table. But it's being able to sit and listen and say, like, when she says, I'll give you one specific example. So the other day I was incredibly frustrated with something that had happened with the work, and I come in and I'm like, oh, this was meant to be done and it wasn't done, and rah, rah. And, I'm venting and venting away. And then, in the 15 minutes later, our daughter's having a tantrum. And Sally says to me, do you see what just happened there? Like, you brought all this energy in breakfast, right? And it's like, you need to create better barriers to protect your work from our life. And the child within me gets instantly upset and offended by that. And I feel like justifying my behavior and saying, well, I asked for this to be done. But it's one of those things of like, okay, bite my tongue and just listen. Just listen and just listen and sit on it for a while. See how that sits with you. And if you want a rebuttal, you can do it later. But I feel like it's such a hard thing to navigate when you're in a highly fueled environment where you're running your own business and you're a full-time parent, you work from home, all of these things. But it's a skill where you just need to breathe and allow that to sit and just listen and then see how that resonates with you at a later point in time. But she was 100% right. Like, I offloaded all the crap over the breakfast table. Our daughter was there. We were meant to be having family time, and I'm allowing the business to infiltrate our family life. And 15 minutes later, my daughter's having a tantrum. Like, whose fault is that? Is that her fault, or is that my fault? And I can't blame her because she's 3 years old, you know? And I was saying, well, she's not having her breakfast. Why is she not having her breakfast? Because dad just unloaded a whole lot of crap on the family that he should have saved for later. Not to say I can't unload crap. I'm allowed to unload crap, but it's the timing of it. And I think that's one thing that I'm really blessed to have is like, she's great at helping me to structure, because I'm just all go always. I never stop working, but she's great at helping me structure the work around the life. And I think that's the beauty of
Sorry,
women.
is that Sally that's that, or is that your daughter as far as when you witness
No,
that, oh, she's here?
No, that's Sally. Sally is amazing at helping me structure my business around the life, and vice versa, the life around the business, and creating the right spaces and environment for us to be active, work or professionalism, also active as parents too.
Can I just ask, how do you navigate that? Because as you say, you're working together, you own a business together, so you're working together. You're both actively involved in it. As you said, you're the only two employees. You're married. You've got a couple of kids. You're working from home. How do you guys navigate this is our family time. This is business time.
Mm.
This is our couple time.
You know what? It's like, but this is the challenge, Tom. I always say, like, why did I spend all those years working on myself? All those years trying to navigate growing up, navigate, behavioral traits and issues, narcissism, and all of these things that young men feel and go through, and ego. And why did I spend all those years focusing on understanding myself and doing my own internal practice, working on myself, if I can't apply it to, I always say, like, that was the prep, this is the exam. You know what I mean? Like, I've got to prove that all that self-work that I did was worth something. And to do that, you've got to apply it in a model. I'm talking like such a scientist, but you got to apply it in a model that's real life. And the real life model is, 60 to 70 hour a week full-time work with two kids under 3, with sleepless nights, with all of that. And the answer is, like, I don't get it right all the time. I don't get it right a lot of the time, but it's just about consciously trying to always reevaluate. And when you find yourself going down a bad path, like, we have times where we argue and we get heated, and it could be work related or it could be other things, and our egos get in the way, and like any other couple. But it's always about how do we reset? Let's reset right now. Let's reset. Like, we found when we were in New Zealand before we came here, there were some really stressful times when our little girl, who was 8-9 months old, she's starting to crawl. She's really demanding. She's in that I need mummy 24/7 phase. We got a 2.5-year-old, and Sally was just absolutely getting hammered and drained on all sides. And that impacts on our relationship. It impacts on our business, all of that. And so we were like, okay, what can we do? because we're starting to argue about things we shouldn't be arguing about. And we're starting to lose track of what we should be doing as parents, what we should be doing as a business. And so we're like, oh, right, let's have it. And I think the beautiful thing is we can never be angry at each other for long. Just hurts too much. So we both, we don't do the stonewalling for long. We do it like any couple, but we literally will look at each other, we'll tear up and we'll go, okay, come on, let's sort this shit out. And we'll do like reset, right? What can we do? And it was amazing. So what we decided to do was to invest some money every week to hire a babysitter to come on Sunday and start doing date days. And we booked 4 hours and we would go, and the rules were no talking about the kids, just talk about us. And we did crazy things, like we just went to the beach because you forget what it's like going to the beach when you have kids, because going to the beach with kids is different. And we just lay on the beach and we went for a swim and we reconnected and we had some beautiful alone time. We kissed and we hugged and and you've got to keep that love pool. You've got to keep developing and growing it. You can't forget it. You've got to also make conscious time in the evening and be really disciplined about screens and phones, and not when you're at the end of the day just sit with your backs to each other in the bed on your iPhone, scrolling through reels, and you do, because we're all human, but you need to also say to each other, okay, that's enough. And we still will argue about it and go, oh, but I just want 5 minutes. I haven't had any time today to myself. Right. But then it's like you're allowed little bits and pieces. Let's not be anal, but like let's have a reset. Like how often you've got to just keep resetting all the time. Reset the energy of where you're at as a couple and keep the passion and the love and the sparks alive. And it's really interesting because I had the biggest fear growing up around intimacy and relationships. And I think, I don't know, maybe it was just my perception, but I was always under the impression of like, once you're married, that's it. You know, the sex dries up and the intimacy's gone and the kids are the life, and you're that kind of lonely dad who's at the bar with his mates, can't be bothered coming home.
Where did that
And
come from?
it comes from, I think a lot of it comes from TV, a lot of it comes from movies, a lot of it comes from, like comedy. It's always like what was the one growing up with Al Bundy? Where
Married
he's
with
talking.
children.
Yeah, there you go. It's
Yeah.
it's it's that perception of like life is you get married, you have kids, it's centripetal, and you end up coexisting and you hate each other, but you love each other, and it's a great comedy show. And that's kind of what was instilled into us in our culture. And so my fear always was about commitment when I was younger. I didn't want to commit because I thought, that's it, you're done, mate. No more traveling the world with your surfboard, getting all the attention, no more passion and love. It's just going to be mundane, and you'll be lucky to get laid once a month. And that's the reality. And when kids come along, sleeping in separate rooms, like all of those thoughts. And it took me such a long time to commit, even with Sally. I mean, it took a long time for us to get married because that was my biggest fear. And the reality I realized afterwards is it's a fallacy, because at the end of the day, it's all up to you. You actually control that outcome, and you're the biggest barrier to getting the life that you want, not your partner. It's nothing to do with her, because I always thought it was her fault in that perception. And when you work on yourself and you do you the best that you can do, it thrives and flourishes. But she's also got to do her side of it too. But you have the control. And it's so fascinating because like when I got married, I love being married. I love my wife. And I was like, this is way better than being single. This is the greatest. Like I kept telling people, get married, get married. I'm like one of those annoying guys. And sex after marriage was better than sex before marriage. And what's really crazy is I honestly believe And guys out there will go, you're nuts, but sex after kids is better than sex before kids. Our intimacy has changed to a point where it is so much more exciting, fun, playful now that we're parents, because we don't care anymore, because we just do what we want. We're like, we've parents, we've had kids, we've done the reproduction. Let's just play and have fun with it. Let's be silly. Let's be naughty. You know what I mean? Like I said, we went to the beach. We actually went skinny dipping. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's the time of your life where you can really reignite that playfulness within you. But you both have to work on yourselves to get to that point, and you have to make the time to do it. So I really hope that I can inspire people, guys out there that are scared of commitment.
Oh, you're inspiring me.
Just to be like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, I've never felt so happy and in love, and I've never felt so much passion for someone as I do now. I said to Sally, like, we had a date. It's amazing. We went to the spa the other night. So we had a jacuzzi. We had a nude hot tub jacuzzi together in a private spa here in Lima. And it was incredible. It was a raunchy, incredible experience. And I just said to her, like, I cannot get enough of you. Like, I'm more passionate and into you now than when we first met. And I never thought life would be like that. I thought it would be the opposite. And there's something about that. And I read somewhere about a study where they looked at MRI. I got to find this, MRIs of people's brains when they're in love. And there's certain areas of the brain heavily related to dopamine receptors. In love people, they're like, you could look at an MRI scan and go, they're in love based on this MRI because of the passion and the feelings that they're having. And then they reviewed all these couples like years later, and 19 out of 20, their MRIs had changed. So they saw love and passion very differently, but 1 out of 20 hadn't. And I said to Sally, when I read the study, I go, I swear we're the 1 out of, because I can't get enough of you. Your smell, your skin, your hair, like I'm infatuated with you as much now as when I met you. And I've never felt that before in a relationship, ever.
Well, you guys are spending an awful lot of time together. I shouldn't say the word awful lot of time, but think that it's because a lot of people, it's the point around the fear of commitment piece. I mean, I think you're right. I think it also kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation around the programming of the developing mind. So we were kids growing up. It was, The Simpsons. Yeah, Married with Children. It's like it's all of those sitcoms. You're right, that are there, that are kind of painting this picture of like, oh well, the dad's just there, goes to work, comes home, says some silly stuff, sits on the couch and he watches TV. Like that's what the dad does. Whereas I think nowadays, like and this is the whole thing for Better Dads Club, is like we want to do a better job than that. We want to be involved. We're actively involved. We're taking that point of going, well, we're not actually going to sit down and watch screens. I'm going to be present and I'm going to be here. And, you've mentioned that you've done a lot of that personal development work on yourself. You've taken stock of, mental health journey and physical health journey, having gone through that, and then taken action to shift it. You've noticed those moments of, oh, I've met a woman and this is different. I'm taking, oh, she's given me this medicine, this is different. Okay, kind of going down this road, and there's the full engagement. So, I mean, the thing with my dad was that he was not an engaged person in life. He went to work, he came home, he'd drink a cask of wine and he'd smoke a pack or two of cigarettes. Minimal involvement with me, minimal interest in my desires or passions and the things that I was doing. And, it's like he didn't work at cultivating the love, cultivating the relationship with my mum. My mum left him when I was 12. Saw it coming from like 4 years prior, so probably from about the age of 8. I was aware that like this isn't like the what are they called, the dysfunctional families that I'm seeing on TV. It's not that sort of situation. There's something a little bit more real here that's actually fundamental, that this isn't right. And it sounds like you're through, like a lot of people would kind of go, and this is probably what your friends were saying about never work with your wife, because they're seeing it from the point of view of, oh, you're around this person and then you've got to go home to them and then you got to raise kids with them, and then you've got all these other things. But it sounds like you're actively being present. You're passionate about the work that you do. You're passionate about the products that you're delivering and the way that it's helping men. Well, I'm going to talk about it from the man's perspective, but obviously there's market for women, and there's all of the other benefits for women's health as well, because we're all slaves to our hormones. But it sounds like you're actively doing that work, and you're engaged, and you're participating in wanting to make things better. And that presence piece, I think, I'm just making a judgment call from what you're saying, but that you're actively involved in ensuring, as you said, there are rules around sort of screen time. There's rules around when we have arguments and how do we hit each other up. You've softened and learned to keep the inner child at bay that gets defensive and that sort of thing. So, and then that's kind of obviously probably layering on that intimacy, right? Which is would that sort of be a fair assessment?
It's 100%. The most attractive thing in the relationship is the ability to be influenced by your partner, or allow your partner to influence you, and just feeling like you're a team working together. Like Sally always says that. And I think you were saying, yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's that being consciously present is the key. Like, here's what I say. It's tiring. Don't get me wrong. It's tiring. With kids, life can be tiring. But again, it's not a limiting belief. But the key thing is, you're better off giving 30 minutes of conscious presence to your wife or to your children than you are of 2 hours of disconnected presence. And that I see that all the time when I go to the park and I see the parents on the cell phones and the kids are just off doing their thing. And I'm like, honestly, doesn't have to be much. Just has to be done in the right way. It has to be connective and conscious. And I'm learning this. Like, I'm not a saint. Like, I'm not the world's best dad. But today, for example, I took my daughter out, and I saw a park. I had a mission. I got to go here, and do this and that. There's a park. And I said, all right, I'm going to stop for half an hour, and I'm not going to touch my phone. And I'm going to be consciously present with her and play with her in the playground, playing silly games. But I'm going to connect with her the whole time. I'm not just going to let her run around and play because I want 30 minutes of time to myself. And the difference it makes is profound. So when you're talking about your story, like, do you think that if your dad had just given you, when he came home, 30 minutes of conscious connected time, connecting to you and maybe into your mom, it would have made a big difference in your connection to him, or just your development? Or like, how do you feel it would have changed?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, like, I've been thinking about this a fair bit recently. Like, I mean, even though my dad had a really low standard, like, I know he loved me, and I know, as much as he was a prick at times, like, he was really short tempered. He essentially didn't have the skills or the resources that we have. I mean, we live in a day and age where, the conscious parenting or mindful parenting, however you want to call it, is, it's active, and we can see and we can share, and we have the ability to, I think, as men in this generation, like, we are, the amount of dads that are showing up at swim, it's that I see at swimming every Sunday. I'm just like, oh my God, it's awesome. And, I think a lot of, like, my journey for the last couple of years has really been on that piece of, like, how did I get from being up here? Like, me at 33, I was peaking, man. I mean, it was like peak Tom and Luke. We'd recently had some investors come on board. We had, we were looking at, potentially moving me to Korea for this global launch and all this sort of stuff. And then sort of COVID hit, and that pulled everything back. But also looking at my own development, where I have been constantly looking for positive male role models through my entire life. And when I left school, I just went and partied, man. Like, I was 18, I got into hospitality, some really great times and awesome stuff, but it was party. So it was all night, and it was about, how many girls can you go and pick up? How many drugs can you take? How many drinks can you handle? How much, who's can dance all night? Like, you guys went home at 8 a.m. all the way till Monday, and I think that void is really much a piece because of the lack of the male structure. And that's also from reading books, like Stephen Biddulph talks about it in Raising Boys. There's a lot of evidence that shows that the boys that are into drugs, that are, out there partying and even crime, we know that statistically they don't have the male role model at home. And I was very fortunate. I had a really great mum, and like I said, my dad was not a bad dad. He just wasn't actively involved. And when I look back and I look at the male friends that I had, like the guys that I was hanging out with at that age of like 18 to 25, like when we were doing our parties, none of them also had good male role models. So we were all kind of feeding off each other and trying to understand what it is to be a man at an age where, in the, I guess sort of the men's journey on the on the metaphysical side of things, you can look at it from like we're in the page and the night phase. We're out like, actually more the night phase. Like it's all about fucking fighting and feasting, right? So, but we were doing it without boundaries, and we were doing it, I guess, at the detriment of our health. And then I got into health at like sort of 23, made that decision because I was at a bar one Sunday morning, and I was looking around going like, the people here are not actually my friends. I don't actually know these. I'm with these people because of the industry that I'm in, and I've finished work, and we're hanging out because this is just where we are. And I don't want this for my life. I've always had this image of like, I want to be on a yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean. And I'm still not there yet. But that in itself was like a shift for me to go, shit, like if I don't take action and if I don't do anything now, then this is going to be me, and I'm going to wake up. I'm going to wake up at 40, still living with my mum. Here I am. But this is a different. It's a different way.
Yeah.
But I've gone off and I've done stuff and I've made something of my life, and I've actively chosen things, and the situation I'm in is situational, because it needs to be. But there was a taking of the reins. And just kind of going like, okay, my dad was not a good role model. So who are the good role models? And that's where I started looking for, rather than looking at the guys in my peer groups, actually starting to look for successful people that had that life, that had the yachts, and going, okay, well, what are these people doing? Okay, well, they're getting up at 5. They're what we would refer to in hospitality as day walkers. So they've got their day jobs. Okay, so I need to look at that. So then I'm sitting there going, when I'm not playing music, when I'm not drinking and partying, what do I like doing? I'm at the gym. Okay, cool. A day job could be become a personal trainer. Then from personal training, then I got into holistic health coaching. Paul Chek was very much a guiding light in that. And then that's where I got introduced to the holistic side of things, and that it's not just calories in and exercise out. It's actually like we need to look at the whole situation, and we need to look at the hormone regulation. We need to look at sleep. We need to look at what we're putting into, and we need to look at where the food's coming from. So he was the first person, or through his teachings and in his way, was very much like, okay, actually, yeah, organic food matters, what we're doing to the land, and how that then impacts the health of the planet, and then how that impacts the health of us. And if we're having battery raised or factory farmed or intensive farming cows and animals that are in high stress situations, then they're carrying that stress, and then we're consuming that, and then we're actually getting that stress too. So similar to what you're saying around the breakfast table stuff, you're coming in and you're bringing your energy, your daughter's picking up on that, and we're getting that through and that's also documented these days as well, right? So, and then what you've also said around the differences between maca that's taken and then dried at high altitude in the sun versus maca that's genetically modified and grown and treated however it is in China is different. So yeah, look, I mean, I'm really at a point now where I'm trying. Not even trying. Like a year ago, I was very much victim. Very much like, oh, what have I done? Like I can blame my dad for not being there and all this. He did the best he could. And it's one of the key sentences that we have in the men's group that I'm a part of, is it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And I think that there's been an inherent understanding of that for me, as far as going, here's where I am at 23. Like, here's where I am. Here's where I want to be. If I carry on this way, I'm going to end down here, and I can see where that goes. So I need to take the reins, and I need to make a difference. And I think that's the same with parenting. I think that's part of the reason for why we're in a co-parenting relationship, is because, I made the decision. I could see in that our relationship, we were not right. And that was causing friction and that was causing tension. So making the decision to exit, it was a fucking hard one and it fucked me up. But I know that long term, it's me going, like, if we stay in this, it's the same thing. Like, here's where we want to be, and her as well. And me as the man kind of going, well, if I'm continuing just to like play into that, then neither of us are going to be happy. And if neither of us are happy, how's our child going to be? And then what kind of environment are we raising? And I think for me, the environment is a far better indicator of where the child's going to be. So we're separated. It's been hard, definitely hard on her, definitely hard on me as well. But we've both, I think, we're at a point now where we are able to respect each other and kind of understand that each other is there for our son. And I'm trying now, and that's the whole reason for starting Better Dads Club, is like, where are the other dads that are trying to be better? So having this conversation with you is really great, especially around the love and relationship piece, because it's, I think as well, at 40, it's, relationships are different. You're not out there, racking up scorecards again. Oh, I think you've just gone mute, bud.
Sorry, my microphone ran out of battery. I think it's really important. Something that you alluded to in your story is, when we're younger guys, this is what I believe. If you really want to succeed, well, the first thing you need to do is understand where you're currently at, which is what you were saying you did. You had this moment of realization. That's really important. But discipline is super important. Men have a lot of energy, and we have a lot of ego when we're younger, and we have a lot of ideas, and we're very driven and passionate. But discipline is so important in that growth of sticking to, and this is why a lot of guys, I think, are attracted to things like martial arts and the gym, and because it provides a framework of discipline within a goal of achieving something. And often it's related to, just developing their physical self or their emotional self. But discipline is really important. And I find even today, discipline is so important in this modern world of allowing yourself to, create your boundaries and your barriers and create your direction. But I think such a big thing as well is that idea of looking at your ego, looking at yourself in the mirror, and being able to truly see, your true self, your intention. And it's one of the things I've always struggled with when I was younger, was trying to put the ego aside, trying to soften the ego. I was growing up, my mum was very loving with me, and that's that mother-son relationship of like my special little boy, and it's funny how you see that later in life it develops into ego, and it makes it a lot harder when you're older to see how much your ego is influencing your behaviors, your thoughts, your processes. And I think when it comes to relationships, it's something that you really have to, as a guy, work with discipline and work to soften. And looking at this idea of like, men, we have this really unfortunate genetic built-in trait to always see the grass greener on the other side. And you see this all the time in relationships where guys, they get comfortable in the relationship and they're always looking over the fence at the neighbor's lawn, at the other could be traveling the world on that Kontiki tour or surfing around, or, and suddenly, I remember when I was younger in relationships, you've been someone with 2 years and you're looking at all these beautiful women passing you by. Like, why do I see beautiful women every time I'm in a long-term relationship? Where are these women when I'm single? Like, you go through that. But it's really interesting because the true happiness is going to come when you truly put your ego aside, and when you're truly happy within the now of where you are, and you're not seeking that greener grass in other pastures, because you realize that it's not actually greener at all, that you can control your happiness in any given moment. And I mean, it's been a big learning curve for me to go down that road. And I'm still not perfect, but I feel like
This is why I say to people, like, I'm the luckiest man alive because I've got the most incredible woman. And I walk around Latin America today, very different to when I first came to Latin America, where I was looking at all the beauty everywhere. And I said this to my wife yesterday and she laughed. And I said, you are the most beautiful woman in all of Peru. Everyone I pass on the street, I look at you and I think, fuck, I'm lucky I chose you because you're the most gorgeous girl in this whole country. And she always goes, Corin, shush. But it's true. I think there's something, and there's some pride within that as a man. Like for me, what do I really want as a man? I think the fallacy is that kind of ego of I want to feel loved, like my mum loved me. I want to feel special. Now, do I get that love and specialness from flings and one night stands and, and ego driven kind of desires? Or do I get that from pride within feeling like I am this amazing husband and father and supportive pillar of this family? And I feel like the true happiness comes not from that superfluous kind of ego-driven world that we get drawn into, but it comes from sitting, in the bed in the morning with my wife and my 2 kids and knowing that those moments are special for those kids and those moments are special for her and for me. And like in this moment, that's true happiness right here, right now. And it's not going to be found in a nightclub with alcohol, flirting with these attractive Latin people. But it's a journey to actually believe it. I think that's the key. And you've got to be disciplined throughout that journey. But I really encourage men out there, like if you're still in that place of true ego-driven desires for love, I challenge you to find an alternative that I think is more fulfilling in your life.
Have you got any practices or tips for that? Like, so for guys that are maybe starting to feel like, they've been out, they've done the rounds. A friend of mine used to say, clocked Tinder.
Yeah, you've got to the end of Tinder.
Yeah. But it's just kind of starting to realize, like, okay, cool. Actually, like, yeah, there is something missing here. Have you got any, I guess, tools or practices for guys to help them get into that and to get into that state of internal exploration, self-exploration, and separation from the ego, or that ego, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I think just keep inspiring yourself through mirroring other people, like you've done, Tom, with your journey, like I do with my journey. I look up to and admire and I love people like Tony Robbins. Some people think he's too much, but fuck, he's an amazing husband. He's an amazing dad, like an amazing inspirational leader. Like look at people like that. Look at, maybe you're into Stephen Bartlett, the Diary of a CEO, or maybe Joe Rogan's Your Piece of Cake. Like allow those people to inspire you. Be inspired by what you can achieve as a human being. And know that we all fall off the rails every now and then, and we all have our weaknesses and we all have our ego-driven desires, but always push to be better. And I think discipline is key. If you struggle within a framework, then maybe you need to look at something like martial arts as a more disciplined framework to get you on track of what you need to be. Put your energy into those things that are going to reward you. So stop wasting your energy on pornography and alcohol and parties and things that will leave you empty, because you will feel empty the next day. And start putting it into things that bring you abundance. Like for me, 2 big things that really I use to drive me in that direction is surfing. Take up surfing, take up martial arts, take up the gym. If it keeps you on track. I'd rather wake up early and go for a surf than go for drinks the night before. Yeah, and get inspired by things like that, and then look at holistic practices. Look at Pilates, look at yoga, look at Qigong, Tai Chi, look at NLP, look at biodecoding. Look at something that gives you passion, that is more towards a spiritual development. So have a physical outlet and a spiritual outlet. And what a lot of people don't realize, like Sally and I, we spend a huge amount of money every year upskilling ourselves. She's just signed up to do this biodecoding course in Spain. It's a diploma. Last year I studied to be a psychedelic integrative therapist. The year before that, I studied NLP and hypnotherapy. Like, we are constantly investing to upskill ourselves to be better people. And you have to invest. You've got to invest your money. You've got to invest your time into these avenues, because at the end of the day, you're going to be a better person for it. If you discipline and dedicate yourselves towards a cause, and that cause is going to enhance your life, your family life, and your partnerships or your business. There's some advice. I hope some people take it.
Yeah. No, man, that's really awesome, bud. I'm just, I think we could probably wrap things up there.
Yeah.
This has been really great. Thank you for your time this morning and, your evening. But yeah, just before we go, I mean, I just want to know, like, did you always think you were going to be a dad?
Yes. Yeah. I always wanted to be a dad. I really did. And the reason for that is my dad's amazing. And I was like, I want to be a dad to be amazing for someone out there, some beautiful children out there. And I think the world needs dads. The world really needs those strong male role models who can help guide and direct people who are younger, maybe lost or not lost, or requiring direction. You know, we have a mental health epidemic in New Zealand. We have so many people struggling to know where to go, what to do. I mean, the whole AI thing is making it even more crazy what the future will hold. But I think whatever comes in the next 15, 20, 30 years of our lifetime, we need men out there to be the pillars of our tribe, just like they've done for millennia before. Whatever that is going to look like. But they're going to help guide us into the future.
I 100% agree, brother. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay to dads.
Yay to dads. All right. Let's just keep getting better. All right.
Keep working.
Corin, again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so open and honest. And thank you for providing hope to the men out there in terms of libido and sexual enhancement post-marriage. I think that's really awesome.
Honestly, guys,
key takeaway.
The best thing ever. Sex after babies. Amazing.
Right on. Okay. Awesome, man. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much. Go have a great evening and enjoy your dinner tonight. And, man, I'd love to have a conversation with you again. This has been really, really awesome. Thank you very much.